I'm not a lawyer, but this is part 2 of the day 3 recap for the Take Care of Maya trial. The other witness I want to tell you about is this woman whose name is Tashana Duncan, and she is a licensed psychologist who was hired by the Kowalski family during the time Maya was at Johns Hopkins All Children's. And she was hired to evaluate Beata and Jack and Kyle, the brother, in an attempt to help facilitate them getting Maya out of the hospital and back into their care. And the big notes from her testimony are, number one, she says that the hospital was basically claiming that Maya's issue was more of a mental health issue than an actual physical condition. So her big point was, if the hospital was asserting that Maya had a mental health issue, then there should have been therapy or some kind of psychologist that was seeing Maya to treat the mental health issue. But according to her, there really wasn't a plan for that.
The last sentence, you say, as a result of the lack of a coherent approach, it appears that she received little to no medical treatment while hospital administrators and DCF insisted her condition was psychological. Do you see that, Dr. Duncan?
I did make that statement.
Just to clarify, there have been representations that what Maya was in need of during this time was cognitive behavioral therapy. And your testimony is that over 3.5 months, the hospital provided her approximately 3 hours of cognitive behavioral therapy?
Yes, after the initial intake with her and the parents, based on the records reviewed.
She then breaks down how basically saying if your symptoms are actually attributed to a medical condition, doctors can also say that you've made up symptoms.
If you have an identifiable medical condition that is causing symptomology, you cannot say the symptomology is a conversion disorder if there is a medical diagnosis and medical etiology for it. And so the medical doctors that I spoke with, information I reviewed, indicated that she had this rare disorder. A lot of people aren't familiar with it, but that the symptoms that she was displaying were consistent with a diagnosis of the chronic regional pain syndrome.
The other thing that this psychologist talked about was the fact that in all of the research she did on Beata, interviews and evaluations of Beata, she never found any indications from previous doctors or therapists that Beata suffered from a mental health disorder. And Johns Hopkins, who was asserting that Beata had this Munchausen by proxy, actually never did a mental health evaluation on Beata either. On cross by the hospital attorneys, they bring up a report made by the hospital's treating psychologist, whose name is Jennifer Katzenstein, and I'll just let you listen to this clip.
This was on admission. Were you aware that Mom refused a psychiatric consultation on admission?
I was aware of this. I kind of alluded to it earlier, that I knew that there were 2 notes on him, and only one of them that he had seen a shot on.
It's important to note here that on redirect, the family's attorney disputes that report, basically saying that that doctor lied and that Maya never said those things.
And so several statements were put on the screen about what Maya allegedly said to Dr. Lewis. Are you aware that Maya disputes Dr. Lewis's reporting?
She disputed some of that specific reporting to me, so I'm aware of some of that.
So there was a ton that happened on day 3. Obviously, I didn't cover it all, but those are kind of the highlights that I got out of it. They'll be back on Thursday, tomorrow, so we'll see how it goes.